Welcome to Mathematics for Principles of Economics. The topic of this video is what is the relationship between marginal cost and average cost?
And the math behind the economics is the relationship between marginal values and averages.
Recall that marginal cost is the cost of producing one more unit of something, or the change in total cost divided by the change in output, whereas average cost is the number representing a typical cost in a data set, and we find that by taking total cost divided by output. And when we say average cost, we mean average total cost. So our question is whether if there is a relationship between these two costs and between marginal values and average values in general. And here's a table showing how we found marginal cost given total cost and output in the third column and average cost.
So we're going to talk now about the relationship in general between marginal values and averages. So we're going to be given a set of values or some data set to start with, and we're going to be interested in how the average value is going to change when one additional value is added. And in economics, the additional data point is often called the marginal or incremental value. So how will we do this? We need to start by finding the average of our original set, which is just adding up the values and dividing by n. The next thing we'll do is we'll calculate the new average. So here's my marginal value or my incremental value, and this is going to be the new average, the average of the set with the one additional value. And then we're going to compare how the average changes, so how this first average we found compares to the second average we found based upon what we know about that marginal value. So here's an example. We're going to do a quick calculation. We want to check how the average value changes given the following grade information using a 4-point scale for a GPA. So I want to know what my GPA is if in the spring of 2014 I take 4 classes, I get an A, a B, and an A. And then it turns out in the summer term I'm going to take another class, and I want to know my GPA after having taken that summer class based upon the information that I got a C, or I got an A, or I got a B+. And for simplicity, we'll use a 3.5 for B+ in our calculation. So let's do the example quickly here. So for step 1, given my initial data set, I want to calculate my GPA. I have an A, which is a 4. I have a B, which is a 3. I have another B, which is a 3. And I have an A, which is a 4. And I have 4 entries in my data set. So I have 14 over 4, so my GPA at the end of spring term is a 3.5. Next, I'm going to add in a new value. So suppose I get a C that summer. I was doing too much partying at the beach. I'd have 4 plus a 3 here for my B, plus another 3 for my B, plus a 4, and then that C is a measly 2. And I divide by 5, and my average is that's going to give me a GPA of 3.2. So then my step 3 is to compare the information I have. So what do I have? I see that I had a 3.5, and then in the end of the summer I had a 3.2, and my marginal value was a C. So I notice that if my marginal value is less than my original average, the new average goes down. So now let's see, let's do the next example, and what do I get? So I start off again, step 1, I have that same average to begin with. I still have the 3.5 to begin with. And let's see, 3.5 to begin with. Oh, I did it again. Okay, 3.5 to begin with. So step 2, I'm going to take my my new grade is going to be an A now. So I have a 4 plus a 3 plus a 3 plus a 4 plus my new 4. So I had a good summer grade, and I have to divide that by 5. So my new GPA is going to be a 3.6. And then I compare the two. So I see that if my first GPA was a 3.5, my second GPA was a 3.6, and my added value was higher than my original average. So if my marginal is higher than my original average, my new average goes up. And I think I'll leave to you to do this final calculation. If I had added a 3.5 to my GPA, to my grades, I would end up with the same average. So if my marginal value is the same as my average value, then the average overall does not change.
Okay, let's apply this to looking at marginal cost and average cost as we see in the table. And what we see is the same relationship as we found with the GPA. Looking at the numbers in the table where the marginals and averages are already computed for you, if the marginal is less than the average, we see that the average is decreasing. So for quantities from 1 to 5, marginal cost is less than average cost, and we see that this brings the average cost down. Next example is, what if marginal cost is greater than average cost? And we see that in this situation, the marginal being greater than the average brings the average up. So if marginal is greater than average, as in quantities 7 through 10, the average increases. And what if the marginal is exactly equal to the average? Here we see that the marginal is equal to the average at quantity equal to 6, and here we see that the average does not change. And we note also that the average is at a minimum at that point. If we look at this relationship graphically, we see the same thing. When the marginal is less than the average falls. When the marginal is greater than the average increases. And when they're equal, the average is at a relative minimum there. So other times we use a relationship between marginals and averages. We could look at marginal cost and average variable cost, marginal product and average product, marginal revenue and average revenue, and in macro, marginal propensity to consume and average propensity to consume.
Now we've seen how to use the math behind the economics to understand the relationship between marginal cost and average cost. Thank you for listening.